Welcome into the Stardom Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Steph McKinney, joined as always by Jacob Stevens and Ashton Mitchell. Guys, week one is in the books. We officially jumped right on into the NFL season. I'll go ahead and ask you guys, how was week one for you? Now that it's over, are you guys fully into the swing of the season?
Life just feels normal again.
Complete.
I feel like we have purpose with week one fantasy football in the books. So it's good to be back.
Yeah, I would just say that Sunday, basically, I was glued to my couch, hardly moved at all. I was just watching football all day long. So it was a really good time. But by the end of last night's games, I was
zonked.
My eyes were hurting. My head was hurting just from watching so much football. But a lot of big storylines got covered, and man, what a time it was.
Well, at least we have 2 nights here to get ready for more football before we jump right back into it. But look, guys, we got a lot to cover tonight. We're going to be talking news from the weekend. We're also going to do a little coverage of the studs and duds from the weekend, some overachievers and maybe some disappointments. We're going to be going through waiver wire ads. There's a lot of big names with some of the injuries we saw this weekend. And then we're going to do the first half of the week 2 matchups. But guys, there's a lot to cover tonight. Let's jump right up into the news.
News and notes.
Like I said, there was a lot of injuries this week. A lot of big names got injured. And we don't have 100% the clarity on some of these injuries, but we will cover them in a little bit more detail. In the second show of the week, we're going to be talking ins and outs for the actual games of week 2. But let's just cover them real quick. Marlon Mack, we do know his status. He's out for the year. Definitely a big boost to Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. They also brought in Lamar Miller. I'm not sure if they signed him yet, but I know they are trying him out.
Yeah.
Just to see what he's got, see if he's got anything left. Blake Jarwin is also out for the year. I know it's a big hit to the Cowboys. They're expecting a big season for him this year. Signed him to a big contract in the offseason. But we'll have to see if that's an even bigger boost to that solid wide receiver core that they have there. Le'Veon Bell is expected to miss a couple weeks. But look, they had the ageless Frank Gore there. So
oh my God,
no need to be concerned.
The vampire.
Don't forget about they just signed Kellen Balazs to the active roster. So
yeah, maybe he does something.
Adam Gase.
That's not a great reunited duo there, but we'll have to see what happens.
That's not a goal.
Bowl bound.
Devontae Parker exited the game this weekend with a hamstring injury. Not 100% sure what his status is for week 2 at this point, but we'll have to keep an eye on that moving forward. Michael Thomas, probably the biggest name along with George Kittle to exit the game at the end of the game, but had a disappointing week overall. Exited with a high ankle sprain and is expected to miss at least this week. They play Monday night, but can potentially miss more than 1 week. So we'll have to provide you guys more news as we find out more there. And also, like I said, George Kittle suffered a knee sprain during the game. So again, he had a good first half, but was just disappeared in the second half.
Because he had a broken knee.
And the other pieces of news we had here was we had another Alvin Kamara situation with potential trade rumors, but it came out today that Allen Robinson has requested a trade. He had deleted all references to the Bears on his social medias, but then we were followed soon thereafter by word from his agent that neither him or Allen Robinson himself had requested a trade from the Bears. I'm not sure what to make of this, guys. I don't know if it's speculation on one end or the other. I don't know if we're putting too many eggs into the basket of him making those changes to his social media. But definitely something to keep your eye on, see what happens in that situation. I know they're kind of going through new contract negotiations. So just another thing to keep an eye on. I know Allen Robinson's a high draft capital pick. So definitely something to target as we go through the week. And then one other signing that was an interesting signing. I don't know how much it's really going to make a difference at the start, but we'll have to see as the season plays along. Mohamed Sanu has signed with the 49ers. Had some injury concerns with Debo and
That
Brandon
team is
Ayuk.
depleted of receiving options, man.
Yep. Kendrick Bourne, I believe, was their number one going into week 1 with all the injuries. So maybe Mohamed Sanu can come in and provide some value. We'll have to see. But guys, that's all I have for news. If there's nothing else that you guys have to add, we'll jump right into the studs and duds of week 1.
Let's get those studs and duds in.
Let's do it.
Perfect, guys. There's a lot of great performances in week 1. Some we projected, and some kind of caught us by surprise. Jacob, who was some quarterbacks that really caught you by surprise and had a better week than maybe you expected?
I know the one you want me to say, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. And it was Aaron Rodgers, popped off, dominated, throwing it all over the place. It was really a very impressive performance. I'm a little worried that he might be better than I had previously anticipated.
On good pace for that season-long bet we had.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But Cam Newton, he had a good game as well. I think one of the biggest surprises to most people and not to me was Gardner Minshew. Had a great week, completed 19 of 20 passes, which was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But one I still just believe is a mirage is Mitch Trubisky. He had, I have in my notes that it was the fourth quarter where he was a stud and he threw 3 touchdowns on a comeback win for the against the Lions. But those are kind of the top ones I have that because a few of the other ones that people we expected them to go off and they did. So those are kind of the surprises for me.
That's fair. Look, there were so many wide receivers this week that just had amazing weeks. I know some of these top names obviously performed like we expected, but Ashton, who are some guys on this wide receiver list that just really, really caught your eye and maybe might not be owned in some leagues?
I don't know about not being owned. If my first one here isn't owned, then there's a problem. But I'm going to go with my guy this year. It's Calvin Ridley. He went 9 for 12 with 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. I was really high on him going into this season, and week 1 he didn't disappoint at all. Even though Atlanta didn't walk away with the win, he was a high target for Matt Ryan this week, and I predict that that's just going to continue to flow each and every week coming forward. So
you could probably say the old Falcons wide receiving crew.
Yeah, the stat line from all 3 of them.
Yeah, they were dirty.
Unreal.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Matt Ryan when he's like, we've talked about it in the previous shows before. When he's having a good year, he's having a great year, and as long as his wide receiving targets are healthy and out in the field, he's going to put up those high numbers each and every week. So that just brings value to his receivers and to himself as a QB1. So not bad starts all around. Hayden Hurst, I would have liked to see have more volume and targets, but overall, right. I mean, first week with the team and a real game situation, so I'm not concerned about that moving forward. Another one would be someone who I've kind of already been on a roller coaster with this year, even though we're just in week 1, but it's Darius Slayton. Very, very shocked to see how much volume he got week 1, but very impressed as well. He was 6 for 9 with 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. So more touchdown dependent, but still very impressive. And even though the Giants didn't walk away with a win, I'm excited to see that he's going to be a favorite target for why am I blanking?
Giants.
For the Giants, yeah. Daniel Jones, yeah. That guy that leads the team.
The guy that slings
Daniel
the ball.
Jones.
The one guy.
Danny Dimes.
But yeah, two very impressive outings so far.
Yeah, there's too many wide receivers on that list of studs this week to name. But yeah, those are definitely 2 good guys to highlight there. As for the running backs, there's some guys that we're going to bring up later in the show in terms of the waiver wire. As there's 3 on here that really just had absolute blow-up games that we'll go into a little bit more detail later in the show. But look, we projected Josh Jacobs to have a fantastic game, absolute beast along with CMC. Chris Carson had a great game, but did it in a way that, is never really expected from Chris Carson. He did all of his damage really through the air in terms of receiving, which was very odd.
But is it a good thing?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Uh, only actually had 6 attempts rushing, which might be a little concerning because the real way that he provided value this week was he had 6 receptions on 6 targets and for 2 touchdowns. So in terms of the yardage, I mean, he only had 66 total yards on the day. So even though he was a stud this week, it might be a little concerning with how much volume he's actually going to receive. I know that game was kind of, a lot of just through the air between him and Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan, just kind of throwing it out. But something to keep an eye on. Great performance from him this week, but you never know what's going to happen in that situation. And then another one I kind of wanted to highlight was Raheem Mostert. There's a lot of questions with whether or not he was going to be the lead back there. They got Jarrett McKinnon back. He got in the end zone. They had Tevin Coleman, who was a little bit of a game time decision.
Yeah,
and it looked
that
like
was
he
a
had
little weird.
some limited snap count based on the air conditions there in California. There was apparently some prior health conditions with Tevin Coleman that limited his usage on the day. But Raheem Mostert made the most of his opportunity and had a great day. And what about tight ends, guys? There was a couple big name tight ends that had some great games. Who really stuck out to you guys?
Obviously, Mark Andrews leading the way here. 5 for 6, 58 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's just a stud. He's a stud each and every week. As long as Lamar's out there and they have their other targets to take away some attention, Mark Andrews is going to be an absolute starter.
For sure.
Your start of the week he did okay for himself there, Stefan.
Yep. The only tight end to go over 100 yards of the week, Dallas Goedert. He's currently the tight end 2. So tried to tell you guys beforehand, I had him basically in every single league going. So I was very, very proud of myself. But the other name I think we should spotlight is Noah Fant. Played in the Monday night game and just seemed like he was the number 1 option there for Denver. I know Cortland Sutton missed the game, but guys, I really think Noah Fant can have a breakout sophomore campaign and can really be, one of those impact top 5 tight ends at the end of the year. We'll have to see if he continues on the same pace that we saw him last night. He is going to be very, very impressive. But let's go into a little bit more disappointing note. Let's talk about some of the underachievers, some of the biggest disappointment for the week. Ash, I'll let you lead us off. Who are some quarterbacks that really just let you down this week?
That let me down. Kirk Cousins was kind of disappointing. That was just a game that just wasn't built for him passing as much as I thought he was going to pass. He was 19 for 25. But Kirk has a history of starting off the season pretty rough and then getting into flow after game 4, game 5. So even though he threw 259 yards, I think that's kind of low for what he averages for each year. So I think he's going to pick that up each year or each week moving forward. But my number 1 disappointment obviously is going to be Tom Brady. He got you some points this week if you started him, but just overall in performance with 2 interceptions, that's not like him. So I want to see that improve more, and I think that's just going to come naturally as he becomes more familiar with his offense. There was some miscommunication with him and Mike Evans and some of the other plays that they were running, but I think they'll evolve and become a little bit more smooth as time goes forward.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Jacob, what about some wide receivers? I know those. While we had a lot of big names really come out week 1 and show off, there was also a lot of big names that were huge disappointments. Who kind of leads that for you?
Well, really, I'm going to go through kind of the top guys that you drafted to be superstars. OBJ, they still can't get that connection right. They also got routed, by the Ravens. So it's like, they were throwing it, but they just couldn't figure it out. The Browns just couldn't get much going, honestly, overall. DJ Moore kind of had a disappointing week as well. Not really where you expect him to be. I think he was around I can't remember where he finished. 49, okay? So not great for someone that was drafted in the first few rounds. And Mike Evans, Ashton kind of touched on that. He had a very rough week as well, down at old 54. One of our One of Ashton's boys, Terry, poor Terry, just couldn't get it going. But as you can see, Ashton was okay with what happened overall in the game. He's decked out in his Washington gear. He's really pumped up about it. If you're watching on the YouTube,
It's going to be the best week I have all year. All 4 of my teams won. Washington came back to win. We're leading the NFC East. It's not going to last.
It's the only time you're ever going to be able to
Yeah,
say
this is the only week that I'm going to enjoy all of this together. So I'm just going to ride it out.
and I think Cooper Kupp was kind of a disappointment. Robert Woods, we actually talked about it at the show before, like who would you rather have and who you have before. We said Robert Woods, and we were correct. He had over 100 yards, and Cooper Kupp had 40 yards, I believe it was. Deshaun Jackson, it was a streamer against that Washington secondary this week. Everyone thought he was going to pop off, and he just did nothing. Just a couple injury hampered performances. I'd say Devontae Parker re-injured that hamstring that he was already having some issues with. Michael Thomas, he kind of got injured late, but still they just never got anything going. So that was definitely disappointing. So that's kind of the main ones there for me. I don't know if you guys have anyone you want to add on to that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of big names. Keenan Allen didn't perform as big as we expected. And then A.J. Brown last night it didn't seem like anything was happening with him until late in the game. I know Corey Davis had a big game.
A.J. Boye was all over him too, right?
Yep.
Till he went out.
Yeah. But let's jump into running backs as well. I think the biggest one, obviously, is Saquon Barkley. Like, I don't know what was happening.
Dude, that
Steelers defense was scary.
Did you see that there were 23 QBs that outrushed Saquon this week?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, including Big Ben.
Big Ben was one of them. Yeah.
The fact that all 32 did not rush him was a surprise to me. Just to let everybody know, if you haven't seen already, he had 15 carries for 6 yards. I think it took him until the 13th carry to get back into the positive.
Back to positive.
So it was not a good game from Saquon, to say the least.
Nothing to worry about, though, people. You're not sitting Saquon Barkley, even though he's playing the Bears next week. So
he did have 60 receiving yards, so at least there's something. I mean, he was explosive when he got the ball. He hurdled like 2 guys. So,
yeah.
I mean, he was definitely back.
They were just 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Right.
Yeah, every time they handed him the ball, it just was not going well
He was
for him.
swarmed.
Also, bad games from Joe Mixon. Just couldn't seem to get it going. That whole Cincinnati offense just really didn't look like it was clicking. Le'Veon Bell, as we talked about before in the news, got injured. Missed a lot of snaps. Mark Ingram, I think he didn't have a bad game overall. I just think that, he lost out on those 2 touchdowns that J.K. Dobbins kind of poached from him. The big value for Mark Ingram last year was just he provided so much efficiency in terms of touchdowns. He didn't have as much carries as some of these elite guys, but he always was getting in the end zone. So maybe that's a little bit of a concern with J.K. Dobbins getting that work near the end zone. And as Ashton and Jacob both predicted, Leonard Fournette was just he was not the guy. It still looks like it's Ronald Jones's backfield to lose for now.
Who looked great, by the way.
Yeah, he did look
very
really
explosive.
Good.
Yeah.
If there was one guy on that Tampa Bay offense that looked good, it was definitely Ronald Jones for me.
Yep.
But last but not least, guys, who are some tight ends that disappointed? I just want to start. Whoever wants to take this, I just want to.
I
start
want you to highlight the first one, please.
Why don't we let Ashton do it? Just because it's.
Go ahead,
it's
Ashton. You take this one.
Man, he was a no-show this week.
He was on the field like 55% of the snaps.
I think he had 1 reception. Okay.
I'm pulling it up right now. Let's see where he's at.
Just keep scrolling.
He's
scrolling.
all the way.
I apologize. He had 2. He had 2 receptions for 11
2
yards.
receptions. Okay.
For 11 yards.
It's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, O.J. Howard got the touchdown. I was hoping that would go to Gronk, but either way, yeah. I mean, it's week 1. I'm not concerned.
The Buccaneers, their offense wasn't quite clicking yet either.
I'm not concerned.
Let's just keep making excuses until that happens.
It's like week 15. We're like, it's gonna come around, guys.
Don't
It's
worry.
coming.
Outside of that, I mean, I was high on Hayden Hurst this week.
I was definitely disappointed.
Yeah, just not the performance I was looking for. He went 3 for 5, 38 yards. That's basically it. Just not a lot of volume there, but week 1, first time with the team, so hopefully that'll just evolve into a higher percentage there.
Yep. And a couple other names just to spotlight. We don't have to speak too much on them, but Austin Hooper had a disappointing games along with the rest of that Cleveland offense.
Sit of the week. Boom.
Yep. Evan Ingram, while he looked good on his catches, he just did not perform. It didn't really seem like anybody had it going on that Giants offense except for Darius Slayton, who we talked about in the studs. And then Eric Ebron with a new team for
I
the
want to talk about it.
The Steelers just didn't show up. So
That was the Juju show for you, Stefan. Your start of the week.
It was, yeah. Juju, came up big for me. I needed him actually in one of my games to win, and he performed for me. So I like that Ebron didn't really do much this week. But guys, let's jump into the waiver wire ads. I know this is a big topic, especially with some of these injuries we highlighted earlier. This is the first time of this 2020 season that we're talking waiver wire ads. Now that we've done our draft, we've made it through week 1. We've kind of seen how our teams are shaking out. Let's go through a couple guys that we're looking at to see if they're available on the waiver wire this week, to see if we can kind of snag them and what y'all's takes are on them. Either of you guys, is there a running back that really kind of tops your list, or is there anybody in general who tops your list between running backs, wide receivers, tight ends? Is there someone that you're really looking for in all your leagues to kind of throw on your bench or possibly to have as a flex option? I know it's really dependent on how your roster looks. And maybe you have 3 stud running backs or something like that where you don't maybe need a running back. But if just as a general outlook, who is the guy that you're looking for in all your leagues? Who kind of tops your list of waiver wire ads this week?
Do you want me to take this one right now?
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna run through some names for running back. First on my list is Malcolm Brown. I mentioned him as a guy that I was aiming for this week when we were talking about the games coming up. I know, Stefan, you were in a little bit of a disagreement. You didn't think the veteran was going to get the workload here, but I predicted that he got 1 or 2 touchdowns, and that's exactly what he got. So I felt good about that. I still think it's a situation where he could lose the starting role
so fast. They said he's going to go with the hot hand and kind of the Shanahan style, and I'm like, that is not what I want to hear.
Right,
because he looked great. He looked really good.
Yep.
Against my Cowboys.
Exactly. But if you're looking in a pinch situation, you're hurting at running back, you need someone to ride, and until you need a
couple starts,
find something else. Yeah, Malcolm Brown's not a bad pickup at all. So maybe eye him for waiver pickups. You're gonna fight me on this. Adrian Peterson looked pretty good, man. I was shocked that Washington let him go. He's a workhorse. The man doesn't quit. What do you get? 93 yards this week. He looked good. He looked explosive, and I'm glad he's getting that work in Detroit. I think his volume's going to pick up as well. So keep an eye on him. I think he'd be a good streamer. Peyton Barber, I don't think he's going to be the man in the future, but as of right now, he's got the hot hand, and if that's how Ron Rivera and the offensive coordinators want, go ahead.
Would you guys pick him up? Like on your teams, would you pick up Peyton Barber? Would you drop somebody for him, or are you kind of staying away from it till it's kind of a more defined?
I personally wouldn't right now because I don't need that running back. But for the teams that are maybe hurting a running back position, that's not a bad pickup.
Yeah, I think it's a super deep league. If you're like in a 16-team league, or if you have a super
extremely desperate, is that what you're trying to say?
Multiple flex positions. But I mean, all of his value is through his 2 touchdowns. Like 17 carries for 29 yards isn't an impressive stat line, but the 2 touchdowns is really what brought you that value.
Right. Yeah. And then the last one on my list is Nyheim Hines, 7 for 28.
He'll probably be the hardest one to get.
7 attempts, 28 yards. Yeah. And then
he's the highest end for sure.
Yeah. And he got 1 touchdown. So keep an eye on him.
2.
One rushing and 1 rushing. Yeah. So
I mean, he had that was probably the biggest week of his career, probably. And that probably, I mean, number 5 running back.
But you got to keep an eye on Jonathan Taylor. So
yeah. So out of those guys that you named, who's the number 1 guy that if all of them are available, who's the one you want for the full season?
I'm probably picking up Malcolm Brown.
What about you, Jacob?
Well, a couple we were talking about like Benny Snell looked really good too, and as I previously predicted, the Glass Man himself, James Conner, already injured. I mean, Benny Snell was I think he was a 3rd or 4th round draft pick a couple years ago. Was it 2 years ago? He looked really good. I mean, I think he broke 100 yards last night against the Giants.
Yep.
So I like Benny Snell a lot, but I think James Robinson, who we didn't bring up yet, he's going to be leading that Jaguar backfield. But it's like all these people. There's different. The outlooks can change. Like me and Steph were talking about earlier. It's like Malcolm Brown, is he gonna be? It's not for the year. Like it doesn't feel good to have him for the year because you got to feel like Cam Akers is going to get in there, and then James Robinson. Their whole backfield fell apart. So we're like, when are people going to get back? But I think he's got the clearest path to touches. He had 100% of the carries for the Jaguars this week, which is what are you laughing over there, bud?
I mean,
But it's the
100%
Jaguars, so it's like
yeah.
it. So I don't know, man. Naeem Hines probably looked the best, and I think he's gonna play a Austin Eckler-ish like role for Phillip Rivers because he loves to dump it off. I think he had 21 pass attempts to the running backs, but again, Jonathan Taylor. So I guess I would say James Robinson or Malcolm Brown would be my top ones I'd be spending for. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, Stephen, well, go ahead.
For me, I'm just gonna be real quick with mine. For me, it's Naheem Hines is the guy that I'm probably taking out of those guys. I think the other ones are just kind of band-aids, like they're just short-term solutions. I think Malcolm Brown loses this job. I mean, Malcolm Brown played 60% of the snaps compared to Cam Akers at 33%, but Cam Akers had 4 less carries than him. So they were trying to get him involved. They're trying to get him to work. It was his first game, guys. It was his first NFL game. I think he's a second-round pick and was great in college. I think Cam Akers is going to be the guy before we know it. And then Benny Snell, he looked great week 1, but James Conner is going to be the guy. And we don't expect this injury to be a long-term injury. I know he is injury prone.
For now, okay?
Yeah.
Just keep an eye on him.
And then James Robinson, sure, he's the only running back right now, but Azigbo is going to be back. Raquel Armstead's going to be back. And James Robinson just doesn't have a high ceiling for me. He's not a guy who's ever going to be a top 10 running back in my mind. So that's why I think Naheem Hines has a role all season for going
right
with Marlon Mack out for the year. I think Jonathan Taylor is a top 15 running back rest of the season for me. But Naheem Hines is going to have a serious role in this offense. He's a great receiving option out of the backfield. And I know Phillip Rivers loves that kind of compliment to get him out of sticky situations and just kind of check down to a guy like Hines who can be really, really explosive. He's the highest owned, but if he is available, I would take Naheem Hines there for me.
For sure.
How are y'all feeling about Adrian Peterson's position with DeAndre Swift dropping the game-winning touchdown?
For me, dude, they wanted DeAndre Swift to be involved. Adrian Peterson, while he led the way in terms of yards, he wasn't on the field for that many snaps. He played.
Do you think they would have won the game if AP was out there catching that ball instead of DeAndre Swift dropping it?
I don't think AP would have been open there.
I don't think he would have got to that particular position just yet.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think it's still just gonna be a split backfield. So I'm not super into it. Even if Swift comes on and is the lead, Adrian Peterson's still gonna get 8 to 12 touches. It's just going to happen. They signed him. He's going to get his touches, and he did look pretty good. I don't think he's going to run away with it, but I think he looked good. Kerryon Johnson's kind of the odd man out, it looked like, this week.
Yep.
Yeah.
What about some pass catchers, guys? Who are some wide receivers that, if they're available, you're looking to pick up? I know there's a couple that we talked about earlier in studs like Russell Gage. But look, as we have these huge blow-up games from Matt Ryan where he gets some random receiver involved, they already have Julio. They already have Ridley. Is Russell Gage, is this just a mirage week 1? Maybe he has another week like this, one more time throughout the season. But is Russell Gage someone that you'd actually add right now?
I honestly, I would not. I think Matt Ryan, like you just said, he can go off and throw 450 yards or whatever he threw. But no, you think they're going to take away touches from Calvin Ridley and Julio, and Hayden Hurst is getting worked into that offense, but they brought him in to get targets and do work. I don't see Russell Gage really all I see is this happening every once in a blue moon. So if you can predict that, congrats. I'd stay away from it. I wouldn't want that on my roster. I think the main one from what I've seen, Paris Campbell, he's a higher percentage person, but I think he looked really good with Wild Phil. I think that's kind of be the guy I would target off the top there. And then obviously Dallas Goedert, who is your sweetheart, Stefan.
Yeah, if Dallas Goedert isn't owned in your league, please go pick him up. There's a lot of talk that I saw this week after the game that apparently some people are projecting him to take over that Zach Ertz role and be the tight end one.
And let him roll, let him go free.
To Zach Ertz. Dallas Goedert's obviously a little younger. It looks like he's just as explosive with the ball. It looks like he's just as big of a threat. So some people are projecting him to kind of take over that role that Zach Ertz will leave behind. But that's just chit chat, in the weeds.
Chit chat. The grapevines.
What about it seems like we play this game every year with who is the number 2 wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers. We go through the Lazard King. We go through Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Geronimo Allison when he's healthy. Like it seems like all these guys are constantly being picked up and dropped back onto the waiver wire week in and week out, depending on who that guy actually is. Are you guys wanting to play that little carousel of who's it going to be this week, or would you rather avoid the headache altogether?
I've been on that road too many times.
On the wrong side of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, even last year, I think I had both on my team, on one of my teams, and it was just a back and forth. I never knew who to really lean on.
Who, Allison or
no, Lazard?
Geronimo's gone now. He went to Detroit, but I think he opted out this year or something.
No, Marquise Valdez-Scantling and
the Lazard King came on strong at the end of the year. Yeah,
I mean, I've read and heard in interviews before that Aaron Rodgers prefers Allen Lazard as his number 2 to Devontae Adams. So as far as trust and consistency, I would maybe lean towards Lazard on this a little bit more. But watching Marquise Valdez-Scantling get that deep touchdown was pretty impressive.
That one catch
was ridiculous.
It was pretty dirty. And man, Rodgers looked great. People that were doubting Rodgers coming into this season, I mean, I said it before, I think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder and show everyone what's up. But he didn't disappoint either. So even though he doesn't have a ton of huge talent as weapons, I mean, he has Devontae Adams, who had a phenomenal week and is obviously a top 3 receiver in the NFL. But
here you go, guys. Look, if you don't have a choice, but from these two guys, who are you taking, Lazard or MVS?
I'm leaning Lazard.
I'd probably go MVS. Just based on
Rodgers talked him up.
Based on
I think it was a trick, though, so they would leave Lazard alone. That's kind of where I'm at. I'd go Lazard as well.
I think they're pretty equal values, to be honest. Like, I think either one of them can have a great week. It's just can you pick the week?
And will they keep passing the way they did?
MVS doesn't have a cool name like Lazard, man. He's not the Lazard King.
Dude, he has 3 names.
No, it's hyphenated. It's like 1.5.
And then Jacob, I don't want to leave you out. I know you've been talking about him, but Gardner Minshew, you already said it in the studs, but he had a great game. If he is available in your league, you need that guy to play in the right matchup. They're going to be playing from behind in a lot of games this season.
Yes, they are.
It was a shock that they pulled out the victory in week 1 against the Colts, but
quite the upset.
Yeah, I mean, if he can be as efficient as he was week 1, I mean, you're in for a great year from Gardner, but that volume does have to worry you a little bit. I know he was very efficient with the opportunities he did have, but 20 attempts just isn't going to cut it in terms of top 10 quarterback value for you. You got to find that matchup that's right for him to exploit, I think. But guys, let's jump into the preview for week 2. We're not going to do quite as many matchups as we did last week for the first show, but we have it a little bit split more evenly this week. Let's jump into the Thursday night game first. Maybe not as exciting as we saw with the Chiefs and Texans last week, but we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. Both teams got off to a very disappointing start to their 2020 seasons. Guys, we have a 45.5 point over-under. Cleveland is actually almost a whole touchdown favorite, which is very, very surprising. But what's kind of y'all's outlook on this game? Do you expect any big games from anyone, maybe some bounce backs here and there?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow didn't look awful for his first NFL game. I think he threw one pick. He had a rushing touchdown. He had a touchdown called back at the end of the game on a very questionable call on AJ Green, which AJ Green didn't have a great week, but it wasn't horrible. If he had that touchdown, it would have been a lot better. So
It
we
seemed
can
like
blame the refs.
he was definitely focusing on AJ Brown, though. It seemed like he was going to be the guy for Joe Burrow.
On who?
It seemed like Joe Burrow was really trying to get AJ Green involved, though. Like it seemed like
Okay.
he was going to be his favorite target.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd looked a little lost out there. So I'm not sure how that's going to unfold going forward. I know that they had a good connection in camp apparently. But I think Joe Mixon's going to bounce back. I hope. I mean, the running attack didn't do great against the Browns, but also I think Lamar Jackson was trying to pass more anyway, and then just kind of dominated them that way. What do you see here, Ashton?
Watching Joe Burrow's face at the end of that game.
Oh, yes, that meme.
It's an instant classic now. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, man. I mean, I think he's got a taste of playing Ohio football right now in the NFL. I don't know. I was impressed with the connection with him and Tyler Boyd and AJ Green. I'd like to see more out of Mixon. I'm excited that they're letting Joe Burrow use his legs. He got 46 rushing yards and a touchdown out of 8 rushing attempts. So I'm glad they're utilizing his ability. They're going to need it, plain and simple. They're just going to need it. I'm expecting him to get better as time goes on. There needs to be a little bit more of a connection with.
I wanted to talk about all the Bengals, so you would have to talk about the Browns.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I'll move on to the Browns then. Is that what you want me to do? I'm not a fan of Baker.
I'm just kidding.
I don't like OBJ.
What do you think? You think OBJ is going to bounce back like legit, or what are you thinking for that?
No, I don't. I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it again.
Wow.
I'm not putting my trust in OBJ until I see some consistency with some good performance, and he hasn't delivered. I know y'all were higher on OBJ this year. I'm the lowest on him.
I still am.
I'm not. I'm not going to invest my trust in someone that continues to let me down. Yeah. Man.
But he had 2 drops, so yeah. He's looking at him.
But how valuable are Baker Mayfield targets? Is the question.
Well, apparently not that
Ravens,
valuable.
They're pretty low quality. So I'm thinking that's why I'm like the Bengals defense. I mean, they kind of held the Chargers in check, but the Chargers had Tyrod Taylor to keep in check, and that's pretty easy. What's your outlook for the Browns, Stefan?
Yeah, look, this game features 2 really stud running backs in Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon, who had disappointing week ones. I think Joe Mixon bounces back in a big way. Jacob, I know you're a little higher on this Browns defense than I am. But I just really don't think how the game was going for the Bengals was favorable for Joe Mixon. It seemed like some calls didn't go Joe Burrow's way to really get him started. So I think this week Joe Burrow has a little bit more success, which opens up the field for Joe Mixon. So I think Joe Mixon is going to have a huge game in week 2. And then for Nick Chubb as well, he only had 10 carries in week 1, which was a little surprising. But I think that matchup against the Ravens
script was not working in his favor either.
That matchup against the Ravens really gave way for Kareem Hunt to be more involved. They wanted Kareem Hunt to kind of be a receiving option there, which I think they really want to implement this year. But I think against the Bengals, they're going to rely on Nick Chubb to – I think you could see that rushing total bounce up to 18 to 20 rushes this week, and he's going to have a nice game as well. So I definitely think big bounce backs for both of these running backs. And I also think AJ Green, I think he'll have a good week this week as well. I think Joe Burrow gets it going in week 2. And we can see a nice game from AJ Green. But as for OBJ, man, I was the highest on him in terms of my overall yearly ratings. And it's not OBJ's fault. I just have 100% confidence now that Baker Mayfield just is not as good as we all thought he was going to be. So I am a little bit on the panic meter for OBJ. But,
Right, but you're starting him. I mean, if you drafted
yeah.
him where you drafted him, you're starting him this week. But
Yeah,
yeah,
this is a great matchup. If you're not starting him in this
hopefully,
matchup, you're not going to start him.
right. There you go.
Well, there we go. Okay. So we'll jump into the Sunday matchups. We got a couple of 1:00 games to go over. Another team that kind of disappointed for you was the New York Giants. We already talked about a couple of them, especially Saquon Barkley, who disappointed. They are visiting the Bears. Hopefully, a little bit better matchup than that Pittsburgh Steelers defense that they saw.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get a worse matchup. Goodness.
What about some of these guys? Who's someone that you're really looking to throw in there for this matchup and really just exploit it?
Man, honestly, I don't know. So the Bears, obviously, they're not the Steelers defense, but I mean, Khalil Mack is still there. They've got a pretty decent secondary. I mean, the Detroit Lions, they started hot against them, but kind of got shut down towards the end of the game. So I mean, I think Slayton looked really good. Golden Tate was out. So even if Golden Tate comes back, I'm not very high on him for this week. On the Bears side, I started David Montgomery this past weekend because I didn't have much of a choice. You know, he wasn't awful. He didn't do too bad. I think he finished – where did he finish at? You guys remember? Okay, 37. He had 13 touches. 3 targets. So kind of not terrible, but he was also coming off injured. He was limited. So I'm thinking he's going to have a bounce back against the Giants after I saw Benny Snell run all over them. I'm scared about Allen Robinson, but that's kind of the people I'm looking at.
Let me bring up a name real quick for you guys to kind of get your thoughts here. Anthony Miller is a guy that we didn't talk about in the waiver wire pickups because he is a little bit higher than some of those guys we talked about at 47%. But he had a great game for kind of what we expected in that matchup, or at least made the best out of his opportunity. He had 4 receptions on 6 targets for 76 yards and a fantastic touchdown catch. Is Anthony Miller someone that you guys are looking at if he is available? We saw it last year. We had a couple really, really big games, and we know that the talent is there. But the worry is always with Mitch Trubisky. Like he's not always going to have good games, and really he was having a terrible game until that fourth quarter. But look, we saw a fantastic catch out of Anthony Miller for a touchdown. There's question marks around this whole Allen Robinson situation with whether or not he wants to be traded. Does that move Anthony Miller up your kind of rankings?
I'd say so. I mean, after the performance he had, I mean, he's done this over the past couple of years. He's kind of popped in, but Allen Robinson's kind of been the go-to. But if they're able to air it out and Mitch can just like throw some good passes, or he just gets out and Nick Foles maybe can air it out a little bit better, I think it would move him even higher. But this whole Allen Robinson thing, man, that's pretty murky stuff. I think we're going to have to kind of pay attention to it as the week comes here. I don't know if he's trying to get his contract reworked or whatnot, but he still had 9 targets to Anthony Miller's 6 targets. But still, I mean, I think he moves up a little bit on my board.
And then I think the biggest question of all, Ashton, for you, will Saquon Barkley have more than 6 rushing yards this week?
That's a tough one.
Under 6 rushing yards.
I'm gonna go over.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a safe bet. I think if Saquon lets 6 or less yards happen to him this week, then they're gonna.
If Adrian Peterson could do it against the Bears, I mean, let's be real here. Saquon's gonna at least have 500 yards.
I don't know why you gotta hate on old AP so much, but
only because he played for the Washington football team.
Well, technically, he never really played for the Washington football team.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think Saquon's gonna have a bounce back game. I think they have a lot of work to do in their running game, but if you have Saquon, I mean, his ceiling's way too high not to start him. You're gonna start him every week, so don't doubt Saquon. I'm big on Darius Slayton again this week. I think him and Sterling Shepard are going to be the top targets for Daniel Jones, so keep an eye on them. As far as the Bears go, I don't know, man. Yeah, Mitch struggled, but that fourth quarter he did look really good. So it's funny because you want to put your trust in him and think that he has the potential to be a really good quarterback, but there's not enough consistency there to say, hey, I'm going to rely on you on on a regular basis. So it makes me finicky. And then with Robinson, at this point, if there's rumors about him wanting to get out of Chicago or asking for a trade or being unhappy there with his contract and all that, well now he's got to continue to perform because now he's trying
to get a contract.
Yeah, he's got to get a contract
somebody.
with another team. So I don't look for him to stop performing. It's just a matter if the team continues to use him. So that's going to be on play calling. But I mean, if they're going to use him, he's got to perform. So look for him, to be a good performer if he's getting the workload. So that's just going to be game dependent and depend on what game plays they're making. So maybe keep an eye on him as a streamer or as a wide receiver 2 option.
So in y'all's mind, is Darius Slayton the clear number 1 now for Daniel Jones, or do you still think it's a 1A, 1B situation with him and Sterling Shepard?
With just 1 week in it, I'm going to keep it as a 1A, 1B option right now. I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket with Darius Slayton, but
I'm very proud of him. But
yeah, it was a good performance, but I'm not gonna jump on that ship yet. So definitely worth stashing if you can get them. But I'm not investing everything in it right now. Fair enough.
All right, guys, let's jump into the next matchup. We have the Los Angeles Rams versus the Philadelphia Eagles. A little higher bit of a over-under here with 48.5 point over-under. The Eagles actually favored in this game. It seemed like Jared Goff just wanted to throw little check down passes and let his wide receivers and his weapons do the work for him. It didn't really seem like he was taking any shots down the field. Do you expect Cooper Kupp to get it going maybe this week? Maybe he looks a little farther down the field than 5 yards, or do you expect this, this Sean McVay play calling of, let's keep running all these crazy motions and these screen passes to kind of continue on in week 2?
So apparently that was part of the game plan against the Cowboys, because their front seven is they've been talked about all summer, and how good they are. They weren't letting them get the chance to do it. I mean, they were literally throwing it, doing those quick passes. I think his yards per attempt were 8.9 yards, but I think it was literally game planned to beat the Cowboys, which they sadly did, and it worked out for Robert Woods. I think Cooper Kupp's going to catch a touchdown in this game. I'm surprised the Eagles are favored, honestly. I think the Rams looked really good, and the Eagles, they're still pretty depleted on their receiving weapons, and they just got manhandled by the Washington football team. So I don't know I don't really know what to expect on that front.
Is a strong word.
It's not strong enough, Steph. It's not strong
Chase
enough.
Young, man, that guy is
eight sacks.
But for the receiving options on the Eagles side, it's tough to say because their offensive line was awful and it's injury depleted as well. Like the whole Eagles team is just falling apart, and I don't know how much of it I want aside from the tight ends. And yeah, I mean, hopefully Miles Sanders is back. I mean, Zeke was able to run it well, so I'd expect a pretty good game out of him if he comes back healthy.
Yeah, as far as the Rams go, if I'm starting a receiver, I'm probably looking towards Cooper Kupp this week. Tyler Higbee is a good option too. As far as the Eagles go, Jalen Reagor, he had that one. What was that deep catch that he had?
57 yards.
Yeah, that was a good
one
play.
Catch.
I mean,
he had the D-Jax play. That was the Deshaun Jackson play we were expecting.
He did it for him.
Yeah. Well, is that the new man in, old man out push there? So I think Ertz, I've said it before, I think he's going to be touchdown dependent this year. And I think I agree with you, Stephen, that Goddard has that opportunity to be the tight end 1 for that offense. I think he's earned that trust with Wentz. So keep an eye on Goddard for sure.
If you guys get Malcolm Brown on the waivers this week, would you start him against this Eagles defense?
I mean, depending on where you want to start him. You start him as a flex or –
Yeah, I mean, is he a flex consideration for you this week?
Yeah, I would
say
keep
so.
him as, yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah. I mean, I agree 100% with y'all's take. I mean, look, they have Jalen Ramsey on the Rams. He's there's no one really on this Eagles defense that he's going to shadow. I mean, on this Eagles offense that he's going to shadow. We saw it last week that their biggest option are those two tight ends in terms of receiving options. And obviously Jalen Ramsey isn't going to match up against one of them.
Right. Exactly.
So I don't expect Jalen Ramsey to shadow anybody like we saw with him and Amari Cooper in week 1. So I'm not really worried about the whole Jalen Ramsey effect with these receivers. I don't know that you want to start any of these receivers right now until someone clearly establishes himself. Like maybe Jalen Reagor comes out week 2 and has a great game. Maybe he gets put into flex consideration after that. But until we see something, I mean, I'm not confident in any of these receiving options outside of Ertz and Goddard. I do expect Miles Sanders to be in week 2. He was a late week miss in terms of injuries.
Almost played, yeah.
Yeah, so I expect Miles Sanders to come back, and he should have a great game against this Rams defense. And on the Rams side of the ball, you have to start Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Like they're too good of wide receivers. They're such a big part of this offense that they're going to be heavily utilized in every game. They're almost must starts in every single matchup. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I think really that's all I take on. I'm not super excited about Carson Wentz this week. I'm not super excited about Jared Goff almost ever. So, those guys really aren't sticking out for me this week.
Do you think the Rams defense takes a copycat approach to attacking Wentz and the offensive line that's already banged up and rushing Wentz each and every play this week?
I mean, Aaron Donald's just going to get in there no matter what, especially
Aaron
on a
Donald
depleted offensive line.
Will dominate anybody.
The Cowboys have one of the top offensive lines, and he just ran through it 10 pressures on the QB. So I did want to add one more guy. Did we say anything about Tyler Higbee? I
mentioned that I mentioned that he's a starter this week.
Yeah, I think we drafted Tyler Higbee. He's got to be your number 1 tight end if you did take him.
Cool.
Next up, the highest over-under we have for this lineup of games is the Falcons versus the Cowboys, a game that we do project to be another, kind of shootout, throwing the ball left and right. We saw it with the Falcons and the Seahawks in week 1, where it just seemed like passing yards are just being handed out left and right to both quarterbacks. Do you expect more of the same for this Falcons-Cowboy matchup? Expect it to be all offenses go?
Since I want to talk about the Cowboys, I will talk about the Cowboys. Honestly,
let me do it.
I don't think it's gonna be like, I don't know, man. I don't think the Seattle defense is what it used to be. I know they had Jamal Adams, who was all over the field, but I mean, people are talking about how excited they are for the Seahawks just because Russell Wilson got to air it out. But I know the Falcons are a pretty good offense, but I feel like that offensive line is still somewhat vulnerable, and they couldn't get to him. I think the Cowboys are going to get a little bit more pressure on him. I still think he's going to have a pretty good game, but I don't see it being that high scoring affair, that as high as the Seattle game. But I think you could pretty much start everybody in this game. I mean,
didn't Seattle lead for passing yards this week? Pretty sure they did.
No, Atlanta led.
Atlanta did, because Matt Ryan threw for 450 yards.
Yeah.
He had 3 wide receivers in the top 15. That is just nuts. I think this is going to be.
Oh yeah, Russell had 322. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. I think the Cowboys are definitely going to take this game and make me very happy. But on the Cowboys side of things, I think Cooper is probably going to have a bounce back. He didn't have a terrible week because he started kind of getting open at the end of that game. But I think Cooper is going to have a big week. Gallup as well. And Zeke's going to be fed, just like his tattoo on his stomach said. What do you got from the Falcons side?
I think Matt Ryan's a must go. 450 yards, 37 for 54 attempts, 2 touchdowns. You're not going to get much from him. Yeah, outside of the pocket, but he's a must start. Especially if he's rolling out, his receivers are healthy. Julio, Hurst had a great diving catch. They're going to use him more. He showed the talent there.
Yeah, he'll get worked in more.
So look for him to be more valuable moving forward. But and then Calvin really getting those 2 touchdowns as well. So I'm going to depend on Matt Ryan every week if I have him. Gurley. Maybe we'll see more from Gurley this coming week. But again, I like Cowboys defense, so that could be questionable as well.
But we did see Malcolm Brown run all over the Cowboys, so it's
we did. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to depend.
Leighton Vander Esch.
Yeah, and Gurley did show some thrust there too. He had didn't he get a diving touchdown as well on the goal line there? So that'll be an interesting game for sure. But yeah, I mean, if you have Gurley, if you have Gurley, Hurst, Ridley, Julio, Ryan, you're going to start all of those guys. Zeke's a must start for me for the Cowboys, and then I like Gallup a lot, and then Dak's Dak. So
yeah, I mean, I think all these Cowboys receivers had decent games for what we saw the final score be there. I mean, Amari Cooper is third in the league right now for receptions. He had 14 targets and 10 receptions. But I mean, he only turned that into 81 yards. But I mean, against Jalen Ramsey, that's no small feat at all.
Absolutely,
that's a fantastic game when you really think about it. And then I mean, the other two wide receivers, they had good games as well. I mean, Michael Gallup ended up with 3 receptions for 50 yards, but I mean, there was clearly some acting at the one of the last plays of the game there.
on like a 50-yard pass or 40-yard pass,
which he clearly didn't have offensive pass interference on it and should have won the game. But, you know, that's neither here or there. So, I mean, Michael Gallup's still a must-start, I think, here in this situation. They look like they wanted to get CeeDee Lamb involved. He ended up with a decent game, 5 receptions for 59 yards. But they were running him in different motions. It looked like they were trying to put together some plays if the defensive schemes were setting up for him to kind of get some running opportunities possibly with some reverses or things like that, some screen passes. So I don't know if I'm 100%, clear to roll him out as a flex at this point. In deeper leagues, I have him in a dynasty league where I played him. But I think he's
well, let me ask you, does Blake Jarwin being out for the rest of the season, does that bring him up your board?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so many. The only thing that's ever scared me about the CD situation is just there's so like Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper are great wide receivers to be behind. So to be the third option is just always scary to have them as a fantasy starter for you. But look, I mean, CD is super explosive, can have 100-yard game, any game. So I'm just not. He's the one I'm least certain about in this matchup. But I think everybody else, there's a lot of really big fantasy weapons in this game that you're throwing out there. You're throwing in Dak, you're throwing in Zeke, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup.
It's really all of them.
Yeah, Matt Ryan, you're putting in Todd Gurley, you're putting in Julio and Calvin Ridley.
I do think that Dak's gonna outscore. I think he's gonna have all the time in the world back there in the pocket this week.
Yeah,
and I think he's gonna outscore Matt Ryan this week.
That's the hope. All right, guys. Next up, another. This was a weird one as well for these two teams. Carolina Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, disappointing week for both of these teams. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is going to get it done every week. I don't know if we ever need to really talk about Christian McCaffrey. He's a clear, just lock and load player for you. What about DJ Moore? He was a little bit disappointing, as we talked about in the duds earlier. He's going against this Buccaneers defense who had really strong run defense, but looked like they could be exploited through the air. Do you expect DJ Moore to have a big game?
I'm expecting a bounce back. I don't know how big of a game it's going to be, but I'm definitely expecting a better game than he had. I think Robbie Anderson might take a couple pegs down. But I'll pass over the Buccaneers to their biggest fan, Ashton. What do you got for the Buccaneers this week, baby?
Oh, it's got to be a better performance than they did this past week. So, I mean, maybe they actually use Gronk a little bit more this week.
That's the key. That's really what's going to put him over the top. No pick sixes.
Yeah, he's got. Yeah, I mean, ball control for Tom Brady. He had a couple bad decisions. One, I mean, I think Bruce Arians was saying that that both of them were on Tom Brady. I kind of like that Bruce is putting Tom in check, but at the same time, I think Mike Evans just had a bad read on miscommunication on that route.
He was game time decision too. So
yeah. I mean, I
digress.
They need chemistry. They need to build their chemistry on that offense, and I think they'll just have to.
Why not against the Panthers? You know what I mean? That defense,
that struggling defense,
trash.
So,
garbage.
I think, and Tom's not one to. I mean, he's probably one of the most competitive guys in the NFL, if not the most. So Tom does not like to be on the negative side of that winning streak. So he's going to look for a solid win this week and get on the right track. So
And Tom was also the 10th QB he was QB 10 on the week. So
yep. He gave you the
I don't think
points,
there's any
but-
way he can be worse than that this week. I do not think it's possible. My outlook on Leonard Fournette has not changed as well. I think we kind of touched on that earlier. I think do you think Ronald Jones is just going to keep it trucking?
I hope they use Ronald Jones more than Leonard Fournette. I mean, just offensively speaking, he seemed to be the more explosive back. He looked really impressive. I mean, he had that run straight up the middle, was hurdling over guys as he was still trying to be dragged down to the floor. I mean, he was dragging people. And for his size, I didn't think that was going to be his game style, but he was very impressive. So I really like Ronald Jones. And if you don't have him, what's his owner percentage?
Oh, he's fully owned.
It's like 90-something%.
Okay, so good. Well, I mean, good. People are smart about him because I think he's going to be the leading back for the next few weeks. I mean, until Fournette can – I think Fournette's going to be one of those things where he may be a little bit more touchdown dependent, but we'll see. I don't know.
Are you guys
that backfield's still a little bit confusing.
Are you going to start any tight ends from the Buccaneers side? Would either one of you, O.J. Howard?
Well, Ashton's always going to start Gronk.
I'm saying would you though, like literally this week? I mean, I know it's a great matchup, but I just feel like it's so undefined what's going on with the tight end room.
I just want to know where they're going to use Gronk if they're going to use him. I mean, O.J. Howard got that touchdown on the left side of the field there at the end, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know until we kind of figure out what their game plan is for Gronk and O.J.
They thought it was going to be ticket sales, but then COVID happened, so now they're just kind of stuck with them.
Screwed. Yes, shoot. I mean, you got to think about it though. Tom's most trusted player on that field is Gronk right now. I mean, especially
Scotty Miller
after this week. I do like Scotty Miller. I think he's going to be valuable towards later in the year. I think his value is going to go up for sure. And they try to get him the ball a few times, but didn't work out as well. But yeah, I mean, I see they're going to have to use Gronk. I mean, if you have him, he might be a good streamer, but this offense, I think you might have to give it a couple weeks before they kind of get into motion.
Fair.
Yep. Yeah. One extra little note real quick is I am a little bit worried about Mike Evans. He was not a part of that game plan at all. That was the one guy we were talking about that we think is going to take that step back in this offense with all these weapons that they do have. Had one reception. It was a touchdown, but it just didn't look like he was a part of that game plan. Didn't look like he was going to be a guy that was targeted. Chris Godwin seemed to have that connection with.
I'm not worried about Evans.
I think they were being conservative with Evans.
He was injured
because his
hamstring.
hamstring.
Literally game time decision.
No,
and then Arians came out and said, "I don't like the way we used Mike Evans because he deserves all the touchdowns and deep passes in the world." Okay, next game, please.
Am I converting him to be a Tampa Bay fan?
I had Mike Evans last year. I love him.
All right, there we go.
All right, guys. 49ers versus Jets. Expect this one to be a little bit of a lower scoring game. Two pretty good offenses here, especially the 49ers, but the Jets are no slouch on defense either. Defense, I mean, not offenses, not great offenses. Good rush offense from the 49ers. What do you guys expect for this game? Obviously, Le'Veon Bell is going to miss this game. We're going to see some Frank Gore action. Who are some guys that you guys are kind of targeting? Is there anybody on the Jets side that you're considering here? Jamison Crowder.
That's the only one.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
No one else. Not another player.
Jamison Crowder, though, his value is all in that one pass that he took to the house. But
oh, come on, dude.
Other than that, man, it wasn't looking good there for James Crowder for a while. I think
7 receptions on 13 targets. That's what you got to look at. The target.
What was looking good for the Jets there, though?
He had one pass for 69 yards. That was the one big play for him.
That's only half. That's only half his yards, man. I think he was an option for a Buffalo Bills defense destroying the Jets front line, and he was able to make work with. He's just a trusted option for Sam Darnold, and I think Chris Herndon, he might have some semblance of value, but that's it on that side. I think Jimmy G, he had an okay week. I think the 49ers are, even without the receiving options, I think they're going to I think they'll just kind of dominate the Jets here. I don't see it being too close of a game, but
Kittle
the
might
receiving
possibly
options
miss.
worries me.
Yeah, we could see a missed game from George Kittle. Does that concern you at all? Does that boost all those running backs there?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be a running attack for sure. But I think I'm hoping Ayuk gets out there and can kind of offset it somewhat. Obviously, he's a rookie, and he's no George Kittle. But if they could kind of mix and match and have a balanced gameplay, and just have some options for Jimmy G, I think it'll be just fine.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think Tevin Coleman gets a big boost with the George Kittle possibly
With the better
missing.
air quality.
Yeah. And even Jerick McKinnon, they look like they want to get Jerick McKinnon as a receiving option out of the backfield more than a rushing option, which we saw him do a lot in Minnesota. So I think those guys get big boost. And I think Mostert leads the way again for the 49ers. I think Mostert's probably running back 2 this week with Coleman and McKinnon probably being more flex options, Coleman being, I think, a little bit more favorable for me. Do you guys kind of agree with that?
Agreed.
Yeah, you guys aren't starting Sanu this week, right?
No chance.
Good.
Wide receiver 1 slot, please.
Well, you never. I mean, the born identity could step up too. So
Yeah, we'll have to see what that wide receiver situation looks like when that game comes around. But let's just jump right into the next game. Broncos versus Steelers. We saw some good and some bad for that Broncos offense, and we saw just all good for that Steelers defense. What do you guys expect in there? Do you expect maybe James Conner to miss and maybe another big Benny Snell game? Do you expect Juju to show out like he did? What is kind of y'all's thought process here?
Go ahead, Ashton. You look passionate.
I have a feeling you want the Steelers here.
We can
mix and match.
I don't.
We can mix and match.
I super don't want the running backs. The Broncos. I mean, Derrick Henry was not super effective last night. I don't know if you watched much of that game, but it was a struggle for him. And James Conner, I think he's going to play, and then he's going to break his leg off or something. He'll be gone. Benny Snell will come back in, but I think this is a much better defensive front than the freaking Giants. So I'm not really kind of in on that. I think Juju and Deontay Johnson are just going to keep blossoming to beautiful flowers. And Eric Ebron is going to bounce back this week, people. You heard it here first. He's getting a touchdown.
Can you miss 2 weeks in a row on Eric Ebron?
I will not, but he will not be my start of the week.
What about you?
He's a streaming option for a tight end.
Yeah, I mean, you have Connor questionable with the Steelers, so Snell's a good pocket install there, and then with Philip Lindsay being questionable as well, I mean, you're definitely going to start Melvin Gordon. So, Gordon Sutton you said he's expected to come back this week, or is he questionable? I thought he was out for a couple of weeks at least. You think he'll
play?
He almost played.
They're talking about getting like an injection, but
so that boosts my interest with Noah Fant. I mean, he looked really good, so I would just keep him as a tight end 1 for sure.
Yeah, for me, you saw what the Steelers defense did to every single person not named Darius Slayton.
That's what I was about to say.
But I mean, look, someone will score points. Like Pittsburgh's not going to completely shut the Broncos out. But everybody on this Broncos offense is a downgrade for me. I'm not confident with Melvin Gordon. Philip Lindsay did leave the game too, so we don't know what the status of Philip Lindsay is. If he does miss,
toe. He's got a hurt toe.
Yeah, it's going to be turf toe, and that could be weeks. He could be out for weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be all Melvin Gordon if that's the case. We saw Royce Freeman get like 2 snaps or something like that. But
yeah, he caught a ball. It was pretty wild.
But yeah, I mean these options on that offense are scary against the Steelers. Anytime you match up,
I think. How do you feel about Judy in this game?
I
mean, because
they look like they wanted to get Judy involved. I had Judy last night, and he looked really, really good on some plays, and then he had those 2 big drops that were really costly. He could have had a huge game, but maybe they
kind of comparing to like Slayton, and I don't know. I mean, someone's like you said, someone's going to catch the ball. I think it's going to be him or Fant kind of scoring those points for them.
Yeah.
Someone will be targeted. We don't know if they're going to actually catch it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, but I think Deontay Johnson looked really good for the second half of that game.
A couple punt
He was very
punt
scary at the first
receiving.
part.
That was scary.
But Juju and Deontay Johnson definitely must starts here. And I think whichever starting running back we see for the Steelers, whether it be James Conner or Benny Snell, is probably a great start as well. But let's jump on to the last game on the dockets here. We have the surprising Jacksonville Jaguars against the Titans. Another low over-under here with 42.5. Big favorites for the Titans here. I think we're going to see every team favored over the Jaguars, even though Jaguars got to win in week 1. Do you expect another passing attack from the Jaguars? Do you expect another big game from Minshew? Or what's kind of y'all's take here? What do you expect this game script to look like?
Oh, man, the Jags looked pretty good. I mean, Gardner Minshew was on fire. I think
it is going to be closer.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Ashton. If that's
Titans,
what you're saying.
Yeah, Titans defense is tough though. I expect them to put a lot of pressure on Gardner this week. I think Derrick Henry's going to have a bigger game than he had last week. They're going to utilize him more. Corey Davis stepped up. I was pretty surprised with him as well. So maybe Ryan Tannehill uses him as another dependent receiver. So I don't know. This will be an interesting game.
Let me kind of piggyback off that Corey Davis question here. We've been waiting for Corey Davis to be good since he's been drafted. He was like the 6th overall pick. So this guy obviously has loads of talent, and we saw, a great sideline catch out of him. He looked great all around last night. But
will the targets be there?
What do you make of the situation? Is this a mirage? I mean, we've seen good Corey Davis games before, but he's never been able to maintain any sort of consistency.
And this is where he gets us each time. It's he has those flashes of supreme talent, and you're like, oh my God, where'd that come from? And then you go and pick him up off the waiver or ask for a trade, if someone's got him, and then you play him the next week, and then it's.
I'm not interested until I see something sustained, but I also think that Tannehill's not going to be targeting him that much. I think AJ Boye on AJ Brown kind of slowed him down a bit, and I don't think that's going to be the case moving forward. I think AJ Brown, that was not a great game for AJ Brown, and I think he's going to definitely get those targets and receptions back up. So Corey Davis, I think it's a wait and see. Like you said, he's done this before and had some big blow up games, and then just see you later. I was impressed with Jonnu Smith. I think he looked really good as a target for Tannehill. So I'm expecting this to be I think Henry's going to get the ball 30 more times. They're going to run out the clock. The Jaguars are going to try to pass the ball a little bit, but I think it'll be a little bit closer than what this line is. But I think the Titans are going to just take the possession of the whole game, and Derrick Henry's going to go off.
That's fair enough. Yeah, for me, I think AJ Brown still concerns me a little bit. I mean, it seemed like every other receiving option was playing better than AJ Brown. Even Adam Humphries was having a better game than AJ Brown.
Those are 3-yard passes.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry was obviously disappointing. I know that altitude can affect people. He had his worst game last season against the Broncos as well. So expect a big bounce back from Derrick Henry. I mean, this guy is a workhorse, so he should get it done plenty against the Jaguars. But what about DJ Chark? We saw a touchdown on DJ Chark. We also saw a touchdown out of Laviska Shenault. Like we said, he is the forgotten rookie wide receiver. Found the end zone as well. Is he someone on the waiver that we should have maybe possibly brought up, Laviska Shenault?
Well, yeah, I think he was actually in there. Okay, I put him there with a question mark because I figured we'd talk about him. And he's got a question mark in this matchup here. So you asked this last time, and you were like, I think you were like the forgotten rookie, and we were all like, kind of want to wait and see because we expect the Jaguars to be terrible. But he had a pretty good game. It's another one. It's just got to prove it to me. I think DJ Chark is still that number one option out there.
Yep. Yeah, Keelan Cole also found the end zone as well. So
yeah, he did.
Yep.
There's all three of those guys ended up finding the end zone. And Gardner Minshew obviously was super, super efficient. None of them had over 50 yards receiving though, just FYI. So
Chark only had 3 targets.
Yeah, so
that's not great.
What are y'all feeling on Chris Thompson?
I mean, dude, he was not part of that game plan at all, which was very, very surprising to me considering they won that game. Yeah, for me, Chris Thompson is not in my lineup. I don't know if I'm ready to drop him. I'm probably keeping him on the end of my bench for now. I'm gonna give him one more.
If you got an extra space,
Yeah, I'm
you
gonna
got an
give him one more
extended
week.
bench in your league. A lot of room back there.
Yeah. If it's all Robinson again in week 2, if it's no Chris Thompson to be seen, Chris Thompson will be dropped come week 3 for me. All right, guys. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, that will wrap it up. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're now on Google Podcasts as well, and YouTube, as always, if you'd like to see our smiling faces. You can also check us out on all of the social media platforms. If you have any lineup questions, feel free to send them in. We are happy to bring that up on our next show and address any questions that you may have. We'll be covering the second half of matchups next show, so make sure to tune in then. But until then, guys, that is it. Goodbye.